lectures held with Agha Shaykh Muzaffer Hyder. The lectures start today and they will run until the 29th of September, and they follow a similar pattern as to the lectures before, where we begin with the tilawat of the Holy Quran, followed by a salam, and then the lecture which will be provided by the Shaykh, followed by a naha. I welcome you all again to this small but informative series of lectures, and I hope that we can learn from the vast knowledge of the Shaykh as we have done so before. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite reciter Taha, Brother Taha, to come forward and do the tilawat for us. Now, please, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Surah Zuha. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Waz-zuha wal-layli idha saja. Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you, Brother Taha, for your beautiful recitation of Surah Duha. It really is invigorating to see the youth participate so actively and with so much passion in these lectures, because as it is said, as we grow older, it is essential to bring the younger generation with us, me being part of that generation. Now we have another young speaker with us, Brother Ayan Mirza. If you want to come forward and recite your salam now, please.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam, man.
Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو روز قبر سکینہ پہ آؤ گی تم شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو جب تلک لوٹ کر میں نہ آؤں آ کے شمع جلاؤ گی تم شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو صورت شاہدی بے کفن بھی میرے جیسی اسیر مہن بھی خالی کرتے میں مدفون غربات مثل اصغر رہی بے کفن بھی کیا کفن کی طرح روز چادر اس لحد پر چراؤ گی تم شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو. ایک یثرب کی تھی شہزادی، اس کا سکا تھا عباس غازی. مشق لے کر گیا سوئے دریا، اور قبضے میں کر لی ترائی. لوریوں میں یہ سچی کہانی، روز اس کو سناؤ گی تم. شام کی اور تو ایک کہ وعدہ کرو. ہم نے زندہ سے پائی رہائی، اب بہن باس ہوگی نہ بھائی. بات اتنی سی بس یاد رکھنا، میری بچی ہے غم کی ستائی. تم نے بازار میں تو ستایا، اب نہ اس کو ستاؤ گی تم. شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو. قبر بے کس پہ آنسو بہانے، حال قید ستم کا سنانے. قافلہ کربلا کو چلا ہے، اس کے بابا کا چہلم منانے. اتنا کہہ دو ہماری طرف سے، اس کا چہلم مناؤ گی تم. شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو. شام کی اور تو کہ وعدہ کرو. صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. The Masa'ib of Bibi Sakina is truly heart-wrenching, for we can find excuses, and as you know, the sympathizers of Banu Umayyah and Yazid so often do, they find excuses for the massacre of Karbala, for everything that he did. But the cruelty and the true oppressive nature of that regime was exposed by two of the most innocent people that we find in the story of Karbala and Sham. The first being Hazrat Ali Asghar, the 6-month-old who was martyred without a purpose, and the second being Bibi Sakina, who suffered and who was in such great pain and was specifically targeted because of the closeness that she had to Imam Hussein. Even the hardest of hearts are softened upon hearing the Masa'ib of Bibi Sakina. May we all receive the opportunity at one point or another to visit her Rosa in Sham, and may we all be granted the tawfiq of Ziyarat of Imam Hussein and Sayyidah Zainab and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Shaykh Muzaffer Hyder to kick off our series of lectures yet again, and we hope to capitalize from your vast knowledge. And the Shaykh will be speaking on the topic of the leader of the 313 today, and each day there will be a specific topic, and the program will follow a similar structure, where we will begin with the tilawat of the Holy Quran, followed by a salam, the lecture, and then we will conclude with an aha, inshallah. Shaykh, are you with us here now?
Assalamu alaikum
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
If I could ask everybody to give a Fatiha, recite the Surah Fatiha for all the marhumin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. As-sirata al-mustaqim. Alayhim ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim wa ad-dallin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers of this event, for the honorable host, and for the Bab al-Ilm Society generally, and the brothers who recited at the beginning as well. It was absolutely beautiful. The subject that we're going to be discussing today is about the leader of the 313. Now, we all know that there are going to be these 313 elites who will be the servants and the soldiers of Imam al-Mahdi. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu sharif. But now we want to discuss about their leadership. Will they have some form of leadership? Will the armies of Imam Zaman have somebody to lead them into battle? That's the question. Now, before we go into the discussion, I'd like to zoom out a moment and just talk about the ghaiba. Sometimes we need a refreshing. What is the ghaiba? In a nutshell, let's talk about what the ghaiba is. So throughout history, what happened? Humanity oppressed those servants who were sent to guide them. 124,000 prophets were sent, 330 Rasul were sent, and so many others were sent, great sages of the past. What did we do with them? We killed them, we slew them, we hurt them, we cut off their limbs. There are some terrible ahadith in the books which teach us what our ancestors actually did to the prophets. A time, would you believe it? A time came over Bani Israel. Imam Hussein alayhi salam highlights this for us in a hadith. He says, a time came over Bani Israel when they would slay a messenger of Allah every day. A new prophet would be killed every day and then go about in the markets as though nothing had happened. The Quran teaches us, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Corruption has appeared on land and sea because of what the hands of man has wrought. We live in a terrible world. Okay. Now, what is the ghaiba? After sending all of these prophets and all of these imams, remember, all of the 11 imams were also killed. They were murdered by the people. Right? We failed to support them. After that, Allah took our imam away. All right? He's still with us, but he's in ghaiba, meaning that we have no way of directly contacting the imam, generally speaking. There is a veil, a barrier between us and our imam, even though he walks around, he's walking around on this earth right now. He could be listening to this right now. He knows who's sitting and listening and who's not. Okay, the imam is among us, but we have been deprived of seeing him. Rather, we've been deprived of recognizing him. In this time, it's as if Allah is saying, humanity, go and do whatever you want to do. Yep, that's right. Go and build all the technology you want to build. Go and invent the iPhone. Go and talk and on television. Go and do whatever you like. Come up with whatever ideologies you want to come up with. Yeah, you want to explore feminism, communism, capitalism. You know, you want to say that monarchy is outdated. Go ahead. Go ahead. Do whatever. Go to the moon if you like. Do whatever you like. In the end, you know what's going to happen? You are going to realize that you need Allah, and you're going to come back to the deen. You're going to come back to the religion. And that is basically, in a nutshell, what the ghaibah is all about. In other words, the ghaibah can be looked at in a negative way and a positive way. The negative way is what? We say, oh, we're deprived of our imam. Let's just sit down and let's just give up. The positive way is to say that no, we're deprived of our imam, but this is a golden opportunity to prove ourselves, to prove that we are in fact worthy of having an infallible leader like Imam al-Hujjah al-Qa'im al-Mahdi. Okay, so it's a golden opportunity. Now, let's come to the question of whether we need leadership. Right, before we discuss the leadership of the 313, let's talk about whether we need leadership. I mean, come on, do we actually need it? There's a group of people who will actually, they will be opposed to the whole idea. Why do we need leadership? We don't need leadership. We can lead ourselves, okay? Let's put those people aside for a moment, okay? I'd like to address those mu'mineen, those believers who know that the 313 are going to be coming, who know that the Dhuhr is going to be coming, and that we need to have proper leadership in order to guide us into that glorious golden future ahead of us. I'm addressing you. What does Islam say, just generally speaking, about a leader? And remember, we're not talking about an infallible leader. Naturally, when we talk about leadership in Islam, the Quran, the Ahlul Bayt, they have taught us that they are the actual natural leaders. Our political system is actually imama, to follow the infallible imam in every era. Okay, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the era of ghaibah when we've been deprived of an imam. Okay, so in this era now, do we need a leader? Let's go to see what Islam teaches us. It teaches us, for instance, even in the most minute things in life. In fact, it's not minute. Salah is the example I want to give. Salah, the namaz, the prayers, right? Islam teaches us that even if there's two of you, you should assign one of you to lead the prayers, okay? Even if there's just two of you in a group, let one of you lead the prayers. In other words, let him be the imam of the prayers, and that's what he's referred to, the imam of the jama'ah, okay? We have another hadith as well. It says, if you're going on a journey, right, even if you're in a small group of people, make sure you assign one person to be the leader in that group. Now, let me ask you a question. If we take salah on one hand as being a kind of metaphor for all of life, because salah is the imad-ud-din, according to our riwayat, it is the pillar of the religion, right? So if we take salah to reflect the life, universe, and everything, our actual existence on this physical plane, shouldn't we be trying to mimic the salah in all of our actions? Meaning that if we have a leader for salah, we should have leaders for communities. After all, the salah is mimicking, or at least it's a type of jihad, and it's showing us that we're supposed to have this unified vision. Similarly, the hadith about the choosing a leader when you're going on a journey, I want to ask a question. Are we not on a journey right now? Dear brothers and sisters, are we not headed in a direction, and that direction is the direction of the Dhuhr? In this journey, do we not need a leader? What else does the Quran tell us about leadership, particularly non-infallible leadership? Because lots of people get confused when it comes to this subject. Lots of people start comparing. This is one of the big mistakes that we make. They start saying, well, no, only the imam, the infallible imam. The infallible imam isn't here. We're not talking about that right now, dear brother, dear sister, okay? And the Quran has given us examples of leaders who were not infallible, who were not ma'asum in the traditional sense of it. Okay, for example, Dhul Qarnayn. Let me ask you, Dhul Qarnayn, we're all familiar with the story of this great ruler. Okay, people followed him. He went out, he went across the planet, right? Who was he? Was he a prophet? No. Was he an infallible imam? No. He was a righteous ruler. Okay, so Islam has given us a precedence for a ruler, a leader who's not infallible. What does he do? When the Quran teaches us, Inna Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, the two tribes, they were creating fasad. They were creating corruption in the earth. What did Dhul Qarnayn do? And what did the people who are following him do? Okay, they built a wall to defend humanity from the fasad and the corruption of these two tribes, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, meaning that Islam is even teaching us, the Quran is even teaching us that we need leadership in order to confront the enemies, and that leadership may not be a prophet or imam. And yet it is described in the Quran as being a righteous leadership. What's another example that we have? It's a beautiful example that I love and I crave to actually talk about. It's the example of Talut. Who is Talut in the Quran? He's one of the righteous kings who is appointed to rule the people. Now, of course, when he's appointed over the people immediately object and they say, well, he's not rich enough, he's not this enough, he's not that enough. No, but the point is, this leader was appointed over them. Again, was he a prophet? No. Was he an imam? No. And yet he was a leader. What happened? He was followed as though he was a prophet. Remember, the people who were following him, they were obeying him as though he was an infallible leader, even though he wasn't. They went through all sorts of hardships. They were filtered and they were filtered again. Eventually they got to a river, and Talut told them, whoever drinks from this river more than a handful is not among us. And so they became less. And then they got a little bit further, and then they became less. And then they got a little bit further. And their aim and objective was to fight against this great tyrant who existed at that time, whose name was Jalut. What happens? There's only a few of them left. Out of these few, some of them say, La taqata lana al-yawm. This day we have no power, we have no strength. Even these people failed in that mission. And so there was only a handful, a very small handful of individuals who had been steadfast. And they were the only final few who remained steadfast alongside Talut. What did these people say, and what was their attitude? They said, كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. They said, how many times has a small company defeated a greater company with the permission of Allah? This was their attitude, and this was the attitude of this final people who were remaining by the side of this fallible leader, Talut. What happened? What happened with these final few? And by the way, if you go to the ahadith, this is how beautiful it is. If you go to the ahadith, do you know how many there were alongside Talut? 313. Subhanallah. See how history repeats itself. And Allah has made it like this. He's made history repeat itself. Now, what happened with these people? Because they were steadfast, because they fought alongside the fallible leader, Talut, Allah rewarded them with the infallible leader. And the next verse teaches us that Prophet Dawood was among them, alayhi salam. Maybe they didn't even know it, right? In other words, when you follow the fallible leader and you prove that you have what it takes to follow the fallible leader, then Allah will bestow upon you the infallible leader. Meaning that we need to find out how to follow the fallible leader. We definitely need to identify a leader among ourselves, okay? And we need to follow this leader, because if we find out who that leader is and we follow him, then Allah will help us with the infallible leader. Where have we seen this before? See, we can say about these people, right, who followed Talut and all the rest, they abandoned him. They didn't have the Quran. But in our history, there were people who had the Quran and yet they failed to follow the fallible leader of their time. Who were they? The people of Kufa. What did the people of Kufa do? Muslim ibn Aqil was sent to them to lead them. Some of the people among them said, no, we won't follow him because Muslim ibn Aqil is not infallible. He's not ma'asum, and so we won't follow him. Because they failed to follow the fallible leader, they failed to follow the infallible leader, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Okay, so now we've understood we definitely do need a leader. Yep, there's no other way around it. We're going to need to look amongst ourselves and appoint and find a leader for ourselves. Otherwise, there's no point. Now, the armies of the Mahdi, are they going to have a leader? Now, I'd like to propose a theory. I have a fantastic idea, and I'd like to spell this idea out for all the community and all the people of the world, inshallah, for us all, Muslims, Sunni, Shia, everybody out there. I want everybody to hear, inshallah, that there is an idea, a theory. This theory is we can choose the leader, and we have to choose the leader. There's two ways to identify who the leader is. Okay, one of them is because the infallible Imam has directly appointed the leader. Okay, if he's directly appointed somebody, you have to follow him. Like for instance, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was close and he was on his deathbed, in fact, he appointed a youth called Usama to lead the army. Okay, so it's a done deal. He's appointed somebody. Other times it's no, you don't identify the leader through that, but you identify him through the criteria which has been laid down through the Quran and the instructions of the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim as-salam, okay? Now, when it comes to the armies of the Mahdi, everybody knows that these armies are going to come. Everybody knows that, right? You ask any Shia, you ask any Sunni, you ask Muslims generally, is the Mahdi going to have armies? Yes, they're going to have armies. There's going to be 313, there's going to be 10,000 others. They're going to gather around the army, the Mahdi, and they're going to fight against the Dajjal and against the Sufyani. We know that these epic battles are going to take place, inshallah, very soon. We know that's going to happen. But then, what about the leadership? Why are we so, let me just point something out here. Let me make a note here. Have you noticed how practical we are when it comes to dunyawi things, but when it comes to deen, we suddenly become impractical. We suddenly start to say, oh yeah, it will just happen. It will just happen. Hold on a second. When it comes to dunya, we need to have a roadmap. We need to write up a blueprint. When it comes to dunya, we need to have a budget. When it comes to dunya, we need to have insurance. We need to make sure certain things are going to take place before we pursue any plan. We see ahead. We use our foresight. Oh, but when it comes to deen, when it comes to the armies of the Mahdi, oh, that will just happen. This is a huge a flaw in the mentality which exists in the ummah, unfortunately, today. Okay, where people become completely impractical. No, this is not the way it works. Truly being prepared for the sake of Imam Mahdi means to be practical. Meaning that, okay, if that army is going to come, that army is going to need food. It's going to need water. That food and water is going to need to be provided by people. In other words, we're going to need money. We're going to need funds for that. Moreover, this military needs to be trained. Where are we going to train them? They need to have a barracks. Where is that barracks going to be? Who's going to train them? Where are we going to get those weapons from? You see, as soon as I start talking like this, as soon as we start talking about the practical side of it, people will, you will feel this kind of shrinking away from it. Why? Do we not believe that it's a reality? How come when it comes to this, we just start dreaming? Okay, they're going to need a place to stay. Their families are going to need houses to live in. Right? This is a reality that we're talking about, right? They are going to need an entire infrastructure because those children that army has are going to need to be educated. They need a whole educational system behind them. In other words, we're not just talking about all these facilities. No, we're talking about a nation. We need a nation, at least one nation, that is going to back this entire military and this entire operation of the Mahdi. That's the reality, if we think about it practically. Now, we're going to find a leader, guys. Enough is enough. Dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, the 313 is coming. The army is coming. We need to now appoint a leader, because as well as all those things, this army is going to need a leader. And so let's talk now completely practically and logically, thinking about it, bouncing ideas off each other. Let's come to some practical conclusions about how we can find that leader, how we can choose him, how we can identify him. What's the first trait that we can agree upon that this leader needs to have? Let's go back to the story of Talut. Allah said, when the people object to the appointment of this fallible leader, Allah says that we have strengthened him in ilm. We've strengthened him in knowledge. As well as this, it's just practically understood. He needs to be knowledgeable. Okay, so let's go with this. The leader needs to be knowledgeable. So whoever we're going to choose to be the leader, he needs to have knowledge. What kind of knowledge? There's so many different sciences out there, right? I mean, there's biological knowledge. Does he need to have medical knowledge? Does he need to be able to heal people? Does he need to have architectural knowledge? Does he need to know how to do plumbing? There's so many different fields of science. Does he need to know rocket science? Does he need to know, I don't know, chemistry? What's that knowledge that he absolutely needs to have? Let's see, what's the criteria of the West? The West, look at the West. The criteria for selecting a leader in the West is pretty much charisma. People don't actually look at how many degrees a person has in the West right before appointing a president, for instance, or choosing any sort of leader. They see how charismatic they are, because essentially they need to woo the public and tell them enough lies to get voted in for the next 4 years. Is that the kind of criteria is that the kind of knowledge that we're looking for? The knowledge enough to trick people? No, there is a specific type of knowledge that we need. If we think about this leader that we're going to now choose, he needs to have knowledge enough to identify what the imam would do. Okay, because this person is going to represent the imam. In other words, he needs to know the divine laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning he needs to know what the imam or the prophet would do in his position. That's the reality. What do we refer to as this science? What is this science actually called? Fiqh. That's what it is. It's fiqh. All right. Jurisprudence, the ability or ijtihad is, it's the ability to derive rulings, enough knowledge of the Quran, of the Ahadith, of the historical context, and of the language of Arabic, etc. Enough knowledge of that so that he can perfectly identify what is haqq, what is batil, what needs to be done, what needs to not be done, who are the enemies, who are not the enemies, which path should we take, which path we shouldn't take, etc. Okay, so he needs to have this knowledge. Now, I'm going to share a very strange hadith with you, which many people probably haven't heard yet. It said, there's a hadith, it says that, because the reason I'm telling you this is because we should never put down the ulama of today, many of the great ulama, and I'm not talking about myself and other public speakers, especially those who we have in the West. No. I'm talking about the great ulama. I'm talking about the fuqaha. I'm talking about those people, particularly in Iran, for instance. We should really not think little of them. There is a hadith which says that the scholars, the ulama of the end times will be more knowledgeable than the anbiya of Bani Israel, than the messengers of the time of Bani Israel. If we just think about that for a moment, that is absolutely fascinating, okay? And we really need to appreciate that there are great ulama that exist. So we've established that he needs to be an alim. This leader that we choose, he needs to be an alim. There's no other way about it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a politician or a scientist or this or that or this. No, the knowledge, which is divine knowledge, is that which will help us to carve a path through the meandering kind of the jungle of this world, and do it in a way that Allah will be pleased, in a way closest to the Imam of the time. Okay. Now, I want to take you now to the Sermon of Mina, a quote from the Sermon of Mina, which I would again recommend everybody to go and read the Sermon of Mina. It is absolutely tragic and heartbreaking, and at the same time, it is completely eye-opening. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, one of the things that he said is, he addressed the scholars of his time. Remember, these are people of the Kufans who abandoned the Imam of the time, right? Although these were the people in Mina, but they still abandoned the Imam, right? It was still that same mentality. And he says to these scholars, these ulama, he says, you have failed in your duty as leaders. Okay, it's a complete misconception where we think that ulama who have understood the religion deeply, لَيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, the Quran tells us that these ulama are just there to do certain rituals, that they're just there to do our marriage or our funerals or this or that. No, they are meant to be leaders. And when the ulama fail in this very important task, they actually fail the Imam of their time and their community at large. Okay, so Imam Hussein is complaining to these scholars and he's saying, you failed in your duty as leaders. You are supposed to be leaders. There's another hadith as well. In fact, there's several hadith which we have to highlight at this point, because there are many people who get confused when it comes to marja'iyya. Okay, and there's many discussions that have taken place about marja'iyya, and many have thought that marja'iyya has just existed now. No, even in the time of the Imams, the infallible Imams were alive, they were present. The Prophet, even in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would refer people to certain faqirs, to certain fuqaha, and say, refer to him. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, for instance, somebody asks him a question. They say, look, I don't have access to you. You're far away. You're going to be in that plant. I can't always come to you when I need a question. Imam Sadiq says, go and talk to this certain person, and he gives him a name. He can represent me. He can give you the right answers. Similarly, in the time of Imam Rida alayhi salam, he refers to people to another faqih, and he says, go and ask him questions. The Imam, even while he was present, the Imams, while they were present, they were advocating for a system where people would go and obey other than the Imams, because obeying those marjas, obeying those fuqaha, obeying those learned scholars was the same thing as obeying the Imam of the time. Okay, so now we've established that he needs to be a knowledgeable scholar, but it needs to be more precise. He can't just be any scholar. No, he needs to be a faqih. Okay, as I said, it's not just ordinary scholars. No, fuqaha. The Quran says that a group of people from every community, it's good if they disband from that community, they leave that community for what? لِيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, that they gain deep understanding of the religion. They become fuqaha. Okay, that which we refer to as marjas or ayatullahs or mujtahids. Okay, generally speaking. Now, again, how now? Okay, so let's say that we've chosen this leader. He's a faqih. But hold on a second. There's lots of faqihs. There's so many fuqaha out there, right? There might be, if there's 7 billion people on earth today, there might be, I don't know, 1,000, 10,000 fuqaha in the world today. If, you know, I'm stretching it a little bit, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000, 10,000, I don't know. There's lots, okay? How are we supposed to choose the one who's going to lead? Because we need one, okay? And we're going to discuss that in a moment. Okay, now here's an idea. In order to select that one person who's going to lead the army, who's going to lead the 313, who's going to lead the military of Imam Zaman, why don't we choose a body? Why don't we create a body of fuqaha who come together and they choose the most knowledgeable one among them. This way, we won't fail in choosing the most knowledgeable one among them. 3 questions arise here, and this makes perfect sense, right? That we should come up with this body, a body of people, just like you have any kind of student body, you bring together these fuqaha, they come together, they choose whoever's knowledgeable among them. It's brilliant. It's just fantastic, right? I don't know why nobody's thought of it before. Now, there's 3 questions that are raised. First of all, why fuqaha? Why does this body have to consist of fuqaha? Why can't it just be ordinary people? Why can't it be, I don't know, other people? No, it has to be fuqaha. There's a reason for that. Because since we've understood that it's the ilm of fiqh, the actual knowledge of fiqh, which will lead us to understanding what the imam of the time wants, and it's that science, the science of fiqh, which is going to help us to reach there, well, that means that we need people who understand that science. For instance, if you ask me or you, who are not medical doctors, right? If we ask me or you, who's the most knowledgeable? If I lined up 10 and the same applies to any science, and it goes for fiqh as well. Okay, so that's the first question. Why does it have to be fuqaha? Because of this. Second question, okay, so we've created this body of people who come together. Why can't we just use this body of people? Why do we have to choose one person out of them? Why can't this body itself lead the entire community? Oh, shoot. Okay, so I've just been informed that the screen cut for a moment for about a minute. So I'm going to go back first of all. Okay, so we've established that we need a body of people. Okay, we're going to choose a body of fuqaha. These people are going to come together, these experts in fiqh, and they are going to select a leader from among them. Okay, and they're going to choose somebody who is going to be the most knowledgeable. And when they choose somebody, we're going to know for sure that that somebody is the most knowledgeable among them. Okay, now we said that there's 3 questions that arise about this body. The first thing is, okay, well, why do they need to be fuqaha? Well, because fuqaha are experts in the field of medicine. The fuqaha are experts in the field of fiqh, right? Doctors are experts in the field of medicine. All right, just like doctors are experts in the field of medicine, fuqaha are experts in the field of fiqh. Okay, so if I were to line up, this is the example I gave, if we were to line up 10 doctors and ask me or you, since we don't have medical knowledge and we're not experts in medicine, we won't be able to tell who's the most knowledgeable. But because if we get a body of people who are doctors and they're experts in medicine, they will be able to tell us who's the most knowledgeable among them. Similarly, if we choose fuqaha to choose and select and vouch for one of their own who is the most knowledgeable among them, we can be certain that that person that they choose is certainly the most knowledgeable. Okay, so that was the first question. The second question is, why can't we've created this body, right? We've created this body of people who are going to, they're a body of fuqaha and they're experts. Now, why can't we just take this body itself as our leadership? Why does there only have to be one among them? Why do we have to choose one person? Why can't it just be all of these fuqaha? Well, there's reasons behind that. It doesn't make sense to follow lots of people. Look again at the example. What does Islam teach us about leadership? It shows us that there should always naturally always be one. I'll give you some examples. When you're praying salah, there may be lots of knowledgeable scholars, knowledgeable pious scholars. They're great, they're really knowledgeable. But have you ever seen salah being led by 2 or 3 or 4 people? Never, right? There always has to be one person leading the salah. This is the design of the universe. Allah has created it in this way. He wants there to be one person leading. Okay. Another example is even in the time of the Imams. Subhanallah. Go back to the time of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. These two great Imams were alive at the same time. And yet, as long as Imam Hassan alayhi salam was in this material realm and he was alive, Imam Hussein alayhi salam never gave an order. Have you ever heard of Imam Hussein giving somebody an order? No. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was following the Imam of his time, who was Imam Hassan. It's only when Imam Hassan alayhi salam passed away did the burden fall on Imam Hussein and he became the Imam. There's only ever one. It's the law, it's the principle of the universe. It makes no sense to defy it. What does the Quran say? لو كان فيهما, if there had been in it the heavens and the earth, if there had been in the heavens and the earth, آلهة إلا الله, gods other than Allah, لفسدتا, it would have just been corrupt. It would have been corrupted completely. Can you imagine that for a moment? One God is saying, I want up to be down. Another God is saying, no, I want down to be up. Another God is saying, I want ice cream to melt in the summer. One of them is saying, no, I want ice cream to melt in the winter. The laws of physics would just break. The time, space would just, it would become completely corrupt. You would see no balance. Too many chefs spoil the broth. This is an example given to us in the Holy Quran to help us to understand that there should be a unified voice. Allah is one, his representative should be one. Otherwise, there will be no clarity of vision. Everybody's saying something. Okay, there has to be one leader, and we need to choose that one leader out of these fuqaha. They need to select one of them. Okay. The third question about this body is, in fact, we'll come to that right at the end, inshallah. Okay, so now we've established he needs to be knowledgeable. This leader that we're going to choose, inshallah, you and I, inshallah, we're going to choose this leader. He's going to be knowledgeable. He's got to be a faqih. He has to be chosen by this body of experts who come together, and we're going to establish that body on earth, right? Okay, but knowledge is not the only thing. No. Knowledge can't be the only criteria in choosing the leader of the 313. Why? Because shaitan is knowledgeable. Evil people are knowledgeable. There may be fuqaha who have all the knowledge in the world, but they lack certain other qualities. They don't have piety. They don't have obedience, for instance. Okay? These qualities are certainly important. We need to have that, because he might know what the right thing is to do, but he'll choose to do the wrong thing. For instance, if somebody gives him a bribe, or if somebody threatens his life, he's afraid for his own life, and so he chooses to do the wrong thing, and it misleads the entire ummah, and we fail the Imam of our time. Imam Askari alayhi salam, the 11th Imam, he highlighted for us certain criteria through which we can select the faqih who is the best one to follow. What did he tell us? He says, don't just choose any faqih. No, the Jews of the past made such mistakes. Okay? Don't follow any faqih just because he's knowledgeable. No. Imam Askari alayhi salam says, look for that faqih who is sa'inan li nafsihi, hafizan li dinihi, mukhalifan ala hawa, and he is muti'an li amri mawla. He is, first of all, he's not drowned in his nafs. Okay, he defends his religion like Abbas alayhi salam. He's ready to fight for the religion. He defends it. He protects the religion. Third, he is whatever his nafs says, he goes against it. He does what Allah says. Okay, and the fourth and final thing, he is muti'an li amri mawla. He is obedient to the command of his mawla. He's obedient to the mawla. He's obedient to the imam of his time. Okay, how does he know what the imam wants? Knowledge again. It goes back to knowledge. But look, we can't just choose somebody just purely because of knowledge. No, he needs to have piety. He needs to have obedience. Okay, but even that's not enough. Go back to the story of Talut. Another quality that Talut has in the Quran, Allah highlights it for us, is strength. he needs to have strength. He needs to have power. Okay, he might have knowledge, he might have piety, but if he's got no power, what's the point? We need somebody who can lead the army of the 313. We need somebody who can lead them into battle. He needs to have strength, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders. This is a point which lots of people just don't get. Remember at the beginning, we asked the question, do we actually need leadership? Well, think about this and accept this and recognize this. And I tell my youths especially, realize this. There are people in the community who do not want leadership. They see no reason in it. They don't want it, right? Because again, they have this impractical, they don't want to be practical. Practicality in the deen scares them for some reason. They don't want to follow it, okay? There are people who want an oppressed imam. This is the saddest thing about the ummah. Unfortunately, there are people who love an oppressed imam, but they don't want an imam who has power. We have an example of this in our history, a very unfortunate example. We've all heard that Imam Ali alayhi salam, he was slain, he was attacked, he was martyred by a person called Ibn Muljim. We all know this. Ibn Muljim is the murderer of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And people ask the question, well, who was Ibn Muljim? Everybody says he was a Kharijite. He was one of the Khawarij. He was one of those who, exited the religion. The ISIS, the Daesh of that time. Actually, no. He was a Shia. He was one of the closest Shias. This is a reality. He loved Imam Ali alayhi salam. He defended Imam Ali alayhi salam. When nobody else was willing to defend Imam Ali alayhi salam, Ibn Muljim was there to defend Imam Ali alayhi salam. He fought alongside Imam Ali alayhi salam. This was Ibn Muljim. Okay? What happened that made Ibn Muljim end? His end became that as a murderer of one of the Imams. How? How did he get there? He killed Imam Ali alayhi salam because Imam Ali alayhi salam gained power. As long as Imam Ali was oppressed, as long as he, his rights were taken away from him, as long as he was, being patient and, he didn't have power, Ibn Muljim loved Imam Ali alayhi salam. He was a servant of Imam Ali alayhi salam. He was a Shia of Imam Ali alayhi salam. When Imam Ali became the fourth Khalif, when Imam Ali raised the sword against the likes of Muawiyah and the others, Ibn Muljim grew to hate Imam Ali alayhi salam. And when Ibn Muljim was asked, why did you slay Imam Ali? Do you know what Ibn Muljim said? Why did you, in that cowardly manner, go to Imam Ali and attack him from behind while the Mawla was praying his prayers? Why did you do it? You know what Ibn Muljim said? He said, because I hated Imam Ali alayhi salam after I realized that he had created thousands of widows and orphans. Yes, Imam Ali alayhi salam through his sword created widows. He created orphans. How? He slew people in the battlefield. And those people had wives who became widows. They had children who became orphans when they died. Okay? Ibn Muljim saw this, and instead of recognizing that this is the Imam of his time, he thought he's being an oppressor, he's seizing power, and so he went against the Imam of his time. Today we have people like this. The Quran tells us, La mawla lahum. La mawla lahum. There are people, the kuffar, they have no mawla. Okay? We have to understand there is this mentality of people, and it might exist in us, God forbid, where we forget that our Imam, when he returns, he's not going to be helpless. He's not going to be powerless. He's going to have power. He's going to raise the weaponry. He's going to fight. There will be death. There will be killing. There will be blood. Don't forget. He's coming to avenge the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Where can we see this mentality exist in our communities? Have you not seen that there are many scholars who are spreading this idea that Imam Zaman is only coming with peace? There's not going to be any bloodshed. And they've spread this, this whitewashed message. This is not the reality. And it makes sense now because we have a hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. He said, Islam came a stranger, it will leave a stranger, and it will return a stranger. Why? Because many people will see, when the Imam returns and we see the true deen, we're not going to recognize it if we have this mentality, okay? So very important. We have to recognize there are some people who don't want this leadership and they want an oppressed Imam, all right? But we, inshallah, are not like that. Inshallah, we recognize that no, the Imam is going to have power. We are going to fight, and it is going to be for the right reason, for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think that those oppressors who are on earth today, who have been ruling, their families have been ruling for centuries now, you know, they have oppressed every country. Since I'm giving this lecture primarily to the youth and to the honorable community in Ireland, look at the history of Ireland. Look at the history of Scotland. Look, if nobody wants to read about it, at least, you know, go and watch the movie Braveheart. You know, go and see what the oppressors, the English tyrants did to even their neighbors, let alone the rest of the world. They never let go of power. They were adamant to keep hold of that power. Do you think when Imam Zaman comes, even if he's Noor, if there's Noor coming off his face, that these people are going to drop their weapons and say, we submit? No, there's going to be fighting. Okay, we have to recognize that. This leader that we choose, he needs to be knowledgeable. He needs to be pious. He needs to have strength. He needs to have power. Now, a question. How much power should this leader actually have? There are some who at this point will say, well, that's good. Yeah, this makes sense. But we shouldn't give this leader too much power. What do you mean? Well, he should have some authority, but not all the authority. This again, it makes no sense. It's just silly. It's like, what do you mean? He is the representative. If we just logically think about this leader who we're choosing, he is the representative of the Imam. It makes sense that he has all the rights upon us as the Imam would have. Otherwise, there's no point. Go back to the examples in the Quran. Dhul Qarnayn. Do you think his people said, oh, we're not going to follow you, you're not the Imam? If they had said that, then they failed. They never even managed to build the wall to defend against Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Forget about that chapter in history. The 313 who were with Talut, did they say that? They said, oh, no, you're not infallible, so we're only going to sort of follow you. It doesn't work that way. The people of Kufa, they had this mentality. Muslim ibn Aqil, we love you. You are our leader, but we can't follow you in some things. For instance, when it comes to jihad, we're not going to rise up. Precisely because of this. When Muslim ibn Aqil ordered them to besiege the fortress and the palace of Ibn Ziyad, all of these people, they dispersed. They left Muslim ibn Aqil because of this mentality. They were not able. If they had understood that, no, following Muslim ibn Aqil is like following the Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that would have been, history would have gone a different way. Okay, we need to recognize, and this is why when we, in fact, we're going to come to, we have to recognize this leader needs to have control of the army. The military needs to be completely under his control. Not only that, the media needs to be under his control. Otherwise, you know, you're going to have all these voices saying all sorts of things, spreading lies, spreading rumors, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, he needs to have control over the media. He needs to have control over the entire system. Okay, inshallah, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, if we can choose this leader according to this criteria of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, then we will be closer to the dhuhur. We'll be one step closer to the dhuhur. And in fact, once we've chosen this leader and we prove that we can follow him as the people of the past followed Talut, and the people of the past followed Dhul Qarnayn, etc., we will be headed into a bright future. Now, what if I told you that this idea has already come into fruition? This idea already exists. This theory is already in the practical realms. And all of this that we have discussed, which inshallah you can see how practical, how logical, how straightforward, and how just obvious and clear it is, it already exists. It is referred to as wilayatul faqih. This is precisely what it is. Okay? There's people who attempt to confuse others about this concept in today's world. For instance, one of the ways that they confuse people is they say, oh yeah, it's just a theory. You may have heard this before. It's a theory. Yeah, the theory of wilayatul faqih. It exists. We need other theories too. Really? Is it a theory? You know what? You see, some things, as long as they're in the books, as long as they're in the Quran and the Ahadith, as long as they were there, they were just theories. The moment they became implemented, they stopped being theories. They're not a theory anymore. They are practical. They're a reality, and they are working. I'll give you an example. The wheel is also a theory. A caveman once upon a time thought to himself, you know what? I have a theory. This theory is, if I create a round object, it will help us to move from A to B faster and smoother. As long as he was just thinking it, it was a theory. The moment it was invented and we called it the wheel, we no longer call it a theory anymore. We call it practical. It's reality now, okay? Denying that is just stupidity. If we say that the wheel is just it's not a theory anymore. It's practical. It works, okay? You know what? In some people's minds, prophethood is a theory. Yeah, it's a good theory. Prophethood is a good theory. A human being among us, he is divinely inspired. He gains a message. He speaks to Allah. Allah sends him a message, and he delivers that message to the rest of humanity. Good theory. It's not just a theory anymore. It's practical. It exists. It's a reality that we're living by. Imamat, for many people, is just a theory. Yeah, oh, right. So when the Rasulullah passes away, he will have successors and they will be the heirs of the message, and we obey them while the Prophet has gone. Makes sense. Yeah, good theory. We'll come up with a different theory. Look, it's practical now. When you deny such things, when they've come into the practical realm, you're actually doing kufr. And I don't mean to say that, you know, people who deny the theory completely are kafirs. Don't misquote me, please. I'm not saying that people who deny are kafirs, so to speak. But in the sense that kufr actually means to cover something up. It means to know that something is real and practical, but to cover it up in this sense, yeah, it's completely kufr. It's a sign of disbelief. To see that a theory has come into fruition, it is helping the believers, it's helping the community, it's leading up to the zuhur, and to misguide people about it and say, oh yeah, it's just a theory. Be very careful of this. It's not a theory anymore, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders. It works, just like the wheel works. Okay. The ghaibah, let's go back now. Remember, we started this whole discussion with discussing the idea of what the ghaibah is in a nutshell. Right? It was an opportunity to prove that we have what it takes to get our act together. Have we? That's the question. Have we done that? There's two sides to this coin. The first side is, no, we haven't done that. We don't even have a leadership. We're so far behind. And many of the Shi'as are still asleep. They're not realizing. Okay? The other side of the coin is, yes, we have. We have proven it. We're showing it, okay? Now, let's go to the idea of Talut. Remember, we said before having an infallible leader, we're going to have a fallible leader. And we have to follow him into battle. And we have to develop this idea of كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. We have to prove that we have this attitude of, yeah, we might be outnumbered, but we're still going to fight. Because we believe, and Allah is the ultimate master, right? We believe in this and we prove it. How? Through following the practical leadership of the fallible leader. The people of the past followed Talut, and what happens among them is Dawood. The people of the future too, inshallah, the 313, they will follow the leadership And through following that leadership, they will prove to themselves and to Allah that yes, we have what it takes. And so Allah will bestow upon them Imam al-Hujjah, al-Qa'im, al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif. Let me just point out to you how far behind in the game we really are. They have done this. Even this stage has ended. Okay, and in fact, it's ongoing, but it's already, been sparked. The 8 years war was precisely this. The people fighting with all of their power behind the leadership of Imam Khomeini, they proved it. That yes, we have what it takes. We will give shuhada in this way. Okay, we've even passed over that. We have shown through Wilayatul Faqih, through the practical implementation of Wilayatul Faqih, we've proven that we're ready to confront the Ya'juj and Ma'juj of today. Who are the Ya'juj and Ma'juj of today? Israel, the Zionists. We've proven that yes, just like Dhul Qarnayn of the past, we're ready to fight against the fasad, the corruption of Israel today, and build that wall which needs to be built, metaphorically speaking, right? We're proving that we are not like the people of Kufa who left their fallible leader, Muslim ibn Aqil, alone. We're not like that. No, no, no. We are going to support the Muslim ibn Aqil of today. Who is the Muslim ibn Aqil of today? Practically speaking, it is Wilayatul Faqih. Okay. Now let's come to the idea. Remember, we said that we need to create a body of people, of fuqaha, who come together and choose the most knowledgeable among them. There are so many discussions about who is most knowledgeable. Let me make it easy for you, okay? Remember we said that, there are doctors, and if you want to decide who's the most knowledgeable doctor, you choose 10 of them, right? And, these experts in medicine are now going to choose the most knowledgeable doctor from among them. Okay. How are we going to choose the most knowledgeable faqih? Remember we said that we're going to create this body? This body has been created already. It is referred to as Majlis, the Majlis-e-Khobragan. In other words, it's translated as the assembly of experts. Many people may have heard this term before. The assembly of experts is a group of not 10, 80 mujtahids of the highest eminence who come together, and their job is to look and choose the rahbar, to choose the leader. Not only to choose him, by the way, but to monitor him. If he commits even one sin, that's it, he ceases to be the leader. That's the way the system works. It may seem harsh, but you see, we need that leadership to be, if not infallible, the next level. And the next level is to at least refrain from all sins. And so if the Wali al-Faqih commits even one sin, it's the job of the Majlis to say, you are no longer the leader, we'll choose somebody else. Okay. Our leadership is not like Western leadership. You choose one liar, he stays for 4 years, you just have to put up for it for another 4 years. He's committing all sorts of atrocities, he's lying, he's committing all sorts of sins, but yeah, you have to put up with it for 4 years. Our leadership is not like that. Our leadership does not last 4 years. It's dependent on each second. Because if at any moment the leader, God forbid, commits a sin, that's it, it's over. Okay, that's how pure our leadership is. And now we go to the last idea. How much power should the Wali al-Faqih actually have? Imam Khomeini has actually answered that for us. He says, Wilayatul Faqih hamun wilayatul Rasulullah. The wilaya of the faqih, the guardianship, the leadership of the faqih is the very same guardianship, the very same leadership of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. This, dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, is wilayatul faqih. We are very blessed to be living in this era of the leadership of the fallible leader. May Allah bless him and give him more strength, more courage, and more prowess and more power to him, inshallah, in order to confront the enemies of Imam Zaman, in order to lead the armies of Imam Zaman into the bright and glorious future that we have ahead of us. Inshallah, we're going to be discussing this in more depth and more detail. But I'd like to raise a question at this point, since we're running out of time. I'd like to raise a question, and this question may make you think along a completely different line. The people of the past, they failed to support Muslim ibn Aqil. And if they had supported him, the course of history would have changed. We would be living in a very different world right now. Because that great shahada of Imam Hussein alayhi salam would not have taken place. How strange would the world be today if the people had supported him, and if the hukuma, if the government of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had been established on earth. As Allah says in the Quran, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa. When he's sending Adam to the earth, he says, I'm going to send my representative, my khalifa, my successive authority. That government has still not been established, and that's what we're building up to. If, God forbid, we fail wilayatul faqih, if we fail the fallible leader of our time, you know what may happen? Our Imam al-Hujjah will be martyred just like Imam Hussein alayhi salam was martyred in the past. But inshallah, as we come to the Masa'ib, I'd like to say that that will never happen, inshallah. That is not going to happen, inshallah, because our hadith have shown us that the Imam of our time will not be martyred in that way. No, 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 no. We will establish the government, the divine rulership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. But at this note, I would like to send our salutations to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and say, As-salamu ala al-Hussein wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussein wa ala awlad al-Hussein wa ala ashab al-Hussein. Ya Imam al-Hujjat al-Qa'im al-Mahdi, O Imam of our time, please accept from us these humble efforts that we have made. We have tried everything. Please accept from us our leadership and accept from us these sacrifices that we have made and we will continue to make on your path. There have been many shuhada, many people who have given their blood for the cause. May Allah make us among those who give their blood in your way, O Imam Zaman. But tonight, we wish to give our condolences to you, O Imam, for surely you are most alone. You are alone as you mourn for your grandfather, Abu Abdullah. Oh Imam, I'd like to remind everybody today that the grandfather of the Imam of our time, Muhammad al-Mustafa, people came to him and they said, Ya Mustafa, Ya Rasulullah, we wish to give thanks to you for everything that you have given us. We wish to thank you for the religion of Allah. We wish to thank you for the guidance that you have bestowed upon us. What does Rasulullah say? I ask you for nothing in exchange for this, except that you love my family, except that you love the Ahlul Bayt. How did this ummah treat the family of Rasulullah? How did they treat your family? Oh Rasulullah, Ya Muhammad al-Zaman, How did they deal with your family? They say when Ali alayhi salam went to bury the daughter of Rasulullah, he went to bury Fatima-e-Zahra. He looked at the heavens and let out a scream towards the heavens. And when he was asked, Ya Ali, why did you let out that despairing cry? He said, because it was at that moment that I was burying her that I discovered that her ribs had been broken. Oh Allah, what is this atrocity? What are these tragedies that befell your Ahlul Bayt? When Ali alayhi salam was struck in the masjid by the sword of Ibn Muljim, Ali cried out and said, have I not been a good imam to you? Did I not give you good leadership? Why have you treated us this way? Imam Hassan alayhi salam, how badly and how brutally was he abandoned that to his face the people said, we will not fight. And so Imam Hassan was forced to sign a peace treaty with the enemies. And so, oh Imam, you had to endure your funeral procession being showered by arrows. This is what our Ahlul Bayt and the family of Rasulullah had to endure. But the most painful of them all, the most heartbreaking of them all, the most unbearable of them all is what they did to the last of the 5 of the family of Rasulullah. What they did to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, who was massacred completely alone in the battlefield of Karbala. Ya Hussein, we failed to support your cause. We failed, Muslim ibn Aqil, and so you were brutally massacred in the battlefield of Karbala. You were surrounded by your enemies. Ya Muhammad, this is the ummah. You said about an ummah that a nation would come about within whose hearts there would be a heat and a flame which would never subside. Ya Rasulullah, Ya Mahdi, we are that ummah. Ya Imam Zaman, we are those people in whose hearts there is this pain. When Imam Hussein was alone, his body had been riddled with arrows. He was fighting and he was drenched in his own blood. They say that he cried out, Hal min nasirin yansurni? Is there anybody who will respond to this call? This was the cry and the plea of this Imam, and this call remains with us today. We could not help you, Ya Hussein. O mourners of Hussein, let me tell you tonight, I know I've taken much of your time, but I just want to share this last moment with you. Do you know who did try to help Hussein? Abbas tried to help Hussein, and they cut off the arms of Abbas. And even in those last moments, he tried with all his efforts to help the Imam of his time. When Imam called out for help, do you know who tried to help him? Imam Sajjad tried to help his cause. They say that Imam Sajjad, in that moment of sickness, he falls out of his bed and he begins to crawl, trying to serve the Imam of his time. And there was somebody else who I am grateful to Allah that we are able to mention tonight. His name was Abdullah. He was an 11-year-old boy. He was of the sons of Hassan. And it is said that when Imam Hussein was in his last moments, and when the enemies had surrounded him, and there was nobody else to help Imam Hussein, Abbas is gone, Ali ibn Akbar is gone, Habib ibn Mudahir is gone, Imam Hussein is completely alone. This young boy realizes the message of Karbala. He rushes out to help his uncle. They say that Zainab was weeping. She grabs this youth. She tries to stop him from going. She tries to hold him back. But this pure youth, he pulls away. He runs to his uncle Hussein. He turns to the oppressors and he says, "Oh, son of the corrupt, are you going to attack and strike my uncle?" They say that at this moment, one of the cursed ones strikes this young boy on the arm. His arm is cut. Blood starts to flow. He falls into the lap of Imam Hussein. Hussein holds this pure youth in his arms and he says, "Oh, son of my brother, be patient over what they have done to us. Consider it as a goodness to Allah that you will soon join your ancestors." And then Hussein turns toward the heavens as this youth who is bleeding lies in his arms and he says, "Oh Allah, let them enjoy themselves for a short while." Dua. They say dua is the weapon of the believer. Look at how mazloom, look at how helpless we made the Imam. Look at how helpless the Imam has become, that he can no longer fight. He's called out for help and nobody has come. And now Imam Hussein is turning towards the heavens and he's asking Allah and he's praying to Allah and he's saying, "Let them enjoy themselves for a short while. Then divide them and make them into parties, and do not let their rulers be pleased with them ever, for they invited us to support us. Then they turned their blades and their swords against us, and they fought against us." At this point it is said that Hurmala fired an arrow into the boy's body, and he died in the arms of Hussein. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. I'd like everybody, while we have tears in our eyes, to raise our hands in prayer and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, ya Allah, help us to follow the leadership. Help us to walk the path that will lead us towards the dhuhur of Imam al-Hujjah. Help us to become the soldiers and the servants of Imam al-Hujjatul Qa'im al-Mahdi. And oh Allah, please hasten the dhuhur, for the world around us has become difficult to bear, and it has become, as you state in the Quran, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Oh Allah, cure all those who have an affliction, and there are many people who are suffering with coronavirus right now. There are many people who have been afflicted by this plague. Oh Allah, help all the mu'mineen. Help us to overcome all of our difficulties. Help us to overcome all of our financial burdens. Help us to transcend and to overcome all of these dunyawi difficulties, and help us to reach the Imam of our time.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. शम्मा से शम्मा जले सिलसिला जारी रहे ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے اپنی نسلوں کو سکھاتے راہ ماتم کا ہنر سینہ در سینہ کرے بس یہ عزاداری سفر جیسے حالات بھی ہو یہ عمل جاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے لا کے بدلے یہ زمانے کی روش اور موسم ایک پل بھی نہ رکے اشک عزا اور ماتم ماتم شیخ کا جنون ذہن پر تاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے تم اگر ذاکر شبیر ہے یوں یہ یاد رہے چاہے اس غم کے لیے سر بھی کٹے گھر بھی جلے حرمت فرش عزا جان سے پیاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے یہ سبیل یوں ہی آباد رہے اہل عزا اور گھر گھر پہ نظر آئے علم غازی کا یہ علم اونچا رہے یہ علم داری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے دنیا والوں کی نہ پرواہ ہے نہ کچھ بات کرو منتی بیریاں سجادے کے غم میں پہنو رونق فرش عزا گریہ جاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے ماں بہنوں کو ہے پیغام میرا صرف یہیں اپنے بچوں کو جلوسوں سے نہیں روکو کبھی یہ شہادت ہے شرف یہ شرف جاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے اپنے گھر میں بھی ازاخانہ سجانا ہے مجھے اپنے بچوں کو عزادار بنانا ہے مجھے تاکہ اس نسل میں بھی تازیہ داری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے شمع سے شمع جلے مجلس و ماتم میں شبیر کی تبلیغ کرو باتی مظہر و عرفان زمانے سے کہو منکر بی سے ہر حال میں بیزاری رہے ہم رہے یا نہ رہے یہ عزاداری رہے शम्मा से शम्मा जले Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. रौनक फर्श अज़ा गिरिया जारी रहे. हम रहें या न रहे yazadari rahe. Sitting at home attending these lectures in and of itself is a blessing, but these words remind us of the essence and the beauty of the first Azah of Imam Hussein. Thank you so much, Arsalan, for your heartfelt and beautiful recitation of such a wonderful Naha. And again, I would like to thank Brother Taha Ali, Brother Ayan Mirza, and of course the Sheikh for sharing his knowledge and his wonderful insights with us. I would encourage everyone to join us at the same time after Maghrib, 8 p.m. Dublin time, and for the lecture again tomorrow. And this will continue until the 29th of September. Ma'as salama, take care, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.